Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Greatest Profession podcast. Today we have as a guest Jennifer Paugh. Jen is, or Dr. Paugh is, I met her at there's a very busy clinic in the middle. It's in Winchester, Virginia, where it just, even before COVID, it was one of these clinics that it was just, 5-6 hour waits, things coming through all the time. Actually, during COVID, they ended up being able to appropriately staff, it seemed, and they just had all these staggered shifts. And they even opened up an urgent care service to deal with the sheer number of things. I remember I was up there with Lindsay one of the days, and it was, I think, between 5:50 and 6 p.m. It was maybe 8 triages or something. It was just a triage to the front, triage to the. It was just over and over and over again. So that's the hospital that we met at, and the day that we met, I actually was passing her just a garbage case. That it was this oddly sick cat that they just sort of dropped off, and I couldn't get a hold of the owners or anything. We didn't really have any permission to do anything, but this cat was obviously not doing well, and so I just had to round this case of, like, I don't know, but it's not good. So she was a champ about it. I mean, she wasn't pleased, but I will say that she didn't, take it out on me, which I feel like a lot of us, especially in high stress situations, are wont to do. So that's when we met. Going up there, she, offered us to stay at her place whenever we were up there. We've traveled together, so she's definitely a unique and very kind and caring person who has spent a lot of time in this profession. So, she's been in it a lot longer than I have, which isn't saying much. I mean, I've only been doing it for 5.5 years, but she's had a whole life, within this, and it's not necessarily the thing that she wants to do. And so it's nice to have that conversation, because she's so good at it, but it doesn't necessarily, skill and aptitude have nothing to do with what it is that we should be doing. And she's a really good example, I think, of that as well. Jen is also an interesting person. Her story is interesting because she spent a lot of time overseas, and we get into some of it here, but she kind of went and wandered and took advantage of some of these opportunities. And even now, she's off doing, acro-yoga in Bali and, all those things that most of us, we're too scared to leave our county, much less travel halfway across the globe to take part in something that is, humiliating. It's like physically demanding, and if you don't do it right, it's like, what's wrong with you, and all of that. And it's just, it is a testament to her that she does have this thing, which she would never admit it, but she will work very hard to become incredibly proficient at whatever it is that she's doing. She doesn't let good enough be enough, really. And it doesn't, it's not just limited to vet med. It's all these other things too. So, scuba diving and yoga stuff, and, whatever she does, that's how she does it. So it was really nice having, Jen on the podcast. And I will say, in listening back to it, I don't know what was wrong with me that day. You'll hear, I just feel like my energy was waning. I don't know. Maybe I got off of a 14-hour road trip, or the 20-day stretch on the road, or whatever it was. But I just, for whatever reason, you can tell it's just, my energy wasn't there. Doesn't mean that God, thank Jen for kind of carrying it. She still just as endearing and as interesting. But boy, old Maddie baby fell off the energy wagon on this one. So, just be mindful of that. It's not that it's in slow-mo, it's just that I am. So maybe curl up in your favorite chair, take a recline, and give her a listen. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Paugh. because it's so hard to walk away. I was talking to another friend of mine who does this, and it's just like he's like, yeah, I'm done with it. I can't do it anymore. But also, it pays too good. It just pays
Yeah.
too well, so I can't justify walking away and doing anything else.
Yeah. And as much as I complain and grumble and say that I hate it, I do get a lot of validation from it, and it's tied so much into like who I am as a person, which I hate.
Oh,
But when I like I would love nothing more than like I'm so excited about going to Bali 3 weeks, don't have to think about vet med, like super excited for that. But when I was unemployed in Singapore for 3 months, my self-worth was like never lower. And when I got back to the US and was doing some relief shifts, I could feel myself like, oh, I'm doing something productive. I'm making money. Like I feel good about myself again.
is it just the like work thing? Like, do you think it would be the same with any work, or is it specifically because it's veterinary medicine?
I feel like it would be with any work, but it would have to be work where it's impressive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I couldn't be like the checkout girl at Home Depot or something and feel the I would be I don't know.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't feel like I hate telling people what I do because I don't want to talk about it, but I'm also not embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed to tell people what I do.
Right. I mean, people are always impressed. They're like, there's no one who's like, oh, a veterinarian. Oh, and they're like
Yeah.
sympathetically like, or kind of going through the motions of, oh yeah, what a great profession that is. They're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, that's so amazing. And then they talk about their animals for a while.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's yeah, because like all these other jobs, they're all things, or maybe it's like a thing that somebody else hands to you. Like, here's how you do it. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with say like checkout girl or whatever, but it's like the job is pretty obvious. One would presume,
Yeah.
here's the thing that you have to check out, and then you check it out and you put it away. Whereas like this is something where it's just dynamic and every day is different, and getting through
Yeah.
a day is kind of impressive.
Absolutely. Like people have no, I mean they say it's like, "Oh, wow, that's impressive." But really they have absolutely no idea what a day is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Like I've
true.
always said it'd be kind of funny if we could make, not make, but if pet owners had the opportunity to just like shadow us for a day. Like every pet owner should have to like shadow an ER doctor for a day, and I think they'd be a lot kinder
Right.
to us.
Yeah, that's fair. I also love the idea of making them do it.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you entered. Come on, act, buddy.
Yep.
This is what you're
Yep.
doing for 8 hours.
Hope you
That,
got comfy shoes
I-
on and didn't drink a lot of water because there's no bathroom breaks.
exactly.
There's no sitting down, there's no lunch.
Yeah, I talked to somebody. It was one doctor. I forget where, but she was like, "Yeah, I got pyelonephritis on my internship because I had to work 18 hours and I didn't have chance for a bathroom break." Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy. That sounds like a choice, but I understand how you can get there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I remember there was one shift. It was chaos and things kept coming. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then a stat would come in and it'd be like an hour later. I was like, oh my God, I still have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And it happened like 3 times. And I don't know if somebody did this on purpose or not. I still have the picture somewhere. Or somebody was just like running back and forth and did this is they left a litter box next to my chair. And I was like, is this is this solving my bathroom issues? You just want me to go right by my desk and get back to work?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm surprised how hospitals haven't done that yet. Just put computers in the
Yep.
bathrooms or whatever, so you
Yeah.
can. It's like, yeah, you gotta go take a break while you're gonna write some records while you're in there.
Yep.
That's
Oh
that's
my
amazing.
gosh.
So when you took 3 weeks off or whatever, you said in Singapore, when was that?
That was in, let me get the dates right, 2018. Yeah,
Okay,
2018.
okay. Yeah, because your timeline, you know what? Honestly, I know we've talked about it before, like, but I have it jumbled in my mind. So, like, at some point you left, like,
Yeah.
and then at some point you came back. I I know you came back shortly before we met each other.
Yep.
But what was all that? Like, when did you leave here? And I'm sorry, when did you graduate again?
2007.
Okay, and then when did you leave? Or, like, what happened?
That's a that's a that's a great question. I still don't really know. I was doing emergency work, overnight emergency in Northern Virginia, and it like you get tired, and it wasn't like it was pre-pandemic, so it wasn't insane like it is now.
Right.
And I remember I would like window shop at like 4 a.m. when things would be quiet. There's a website called kookaburravets.com, and it would showcase like international vet jobs. So Europe and Middle East and Asia Pacific, uh, Australia, New Zealand. Um, and I don't remember where I'd ever even heard of this, but I remember hearing sometime long time ago, like, oh, it's so easy to go work in the Middle East that these job contracts, like you just show up, they've got a furnished apartment for you, they've got a car, you just like walk in and you take this job. They take care of all your visa stuff, you get to live in this cool country, and it's tax free, as long as you don't make over a certain amount in dollars. So it was kind of something I always thought in my head, like I would love to do that because I went to vet school out of the country. I've traveled a lot. Like I love doing new things and meeting new people and being in different cultures
Right.
and stuff. So I went, and I worked in a general practice there I went January 2017, April 2018. Yeah, so it was, sorry,
Oh.
2018 when I was in Singapore. April 2018, it was this whole, I still don't even really know what happened, but like the ministry wouldn't renew my license, but they wouldn't tell us why. It was just this whole thing. So the company was like, we have to let you go because you can't work, but we love you. We wish
Oh.
you could stay.
Right.
So I wasn't ready to go back to the US yet. And I was supposed to do a 200-hour yoga teacher training in Bali that August, and this was April. So I found a job on that website in Singapore, and I was like, cool, I'll just go live in Singapore for a few months, do some work at a clinic, go do my teacher training, and then see where I'm at, if I want to stay out there, if I want to go back to the US. But the
Hmm.
clinic that I started at in Singapore, it was not a good fit, and I told them as much, that I couldn't practice there with how they practiced, and I wouldn't go back. And they reported me to the veterinary board out
Oh
there.
my God.
So
Jeez.
they like made up stuff because they were mad at me,
Oh
because
God.
they'd planned to just like go on vacation for a month and leave me in charge of the clinic,
Hmm.
and they couldn't do that because I refused to stay there. So they reported me to the board. I'd found another job at a nice place, but I couldn't get my visa transferred, and I had to go to like board hearings in
Oh
Singapore to get it. And
God.
it got
That's stressful, like in a country that
right,
grew up in.
right,
Oh
exactly.
my God.
So
Wow.
I got it. It all got cleared because I had done absolutely nothing wrong, and they had
Sure.
lied about things, but it was still super stressful.
Yeah.
But I was there for 3 months, like trying to clear my name, and then I like ran out of money, so I had to fly
Sure.
back to Virginia and did relief work. Because that was June, I think, I got back in June, and I'm sure the stress of everything in July, I ended up having to have emergency. That was my appendix. Yeah, yeah, my appendix.
Oh,
I'd had my appendix out, and
dang.
then I had to cancel my yoga thing because I
Oh
was
no.
I was post op
God.
from the appendix. So it was a whole thing.
God. Wow. So wait, and so then the 2017 period, you were in the Middle East.
I was in Abu Dhabi.
Okay. Okay, cool. So then you were there for like a little over a year,
A little over a year. Yeah.
and that's the job that you found when you were window shopping.
Yes.
God, what was that like?
It was neat. It was fun to be able to practice like that. Like the hospital was limited, and I'll never forget my boss. He was Canadian, and he was so funny. Um, he's like, you're gonna have frustrations here. Everywhere there's frustrations, they're just different frustrations. So all the
Right.
stress you're feeling with the job you have now, you will feel none of that here because we don't have those problems. We have a whole new different set of problems. We we can't carry propofol because there's not a picture of a dog on it.
Oh, wow.
Like it would just be like crazy stuff. But for the most part, like the clients were really nice. I mean, we're it. Like there's no specialists, there's no emergency centers. We had to share on call, which was not fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a really neat experience to be able to do that and then to get to experience like the culture and the life there.
Yeah, and did they got you an apartment and a car and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So then when you were living there, were you sort of a part of, I don't know, was it like an apartment building where it's a bunch of people who are doing the same thing, or do you feel like you were legitimately, living in that country?
Oh, I was living in that country.
That's awesome.
So it was, I'm trying to remember how many. I was on the 13th floor, and there were probably 8 apartments on each floor, and the building was like 30 stories or something like that.
Wow.
Um, so I was the only, the other vet lived in the building next to me.
Nice.
But we were the only two from work that lived there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So then, but that was designed to be temporary. Like you weren't going to
Yeah.
stay there forever.
No, I would have liked to have stayed there longer than that.
Right.
But it's just not how it worked out. Mostly because the ability to travel, that hub of travel, I could be in Paris in 4 hours, I could
Right.
be in Kenya in 4 hours, the Maldives, like Singapore, like all these places. It's like us, you know, going to the Bahamas. It's like just such an easy
Right.
hop. Um, that I would have liked to have stayed longer and like gone to Jordan and gone out into the desert and got to explore more out there and stuff.
Right. Did you, so you say you traveled a bunch before, like, did you grow up traveling? Is that something you would do as a family or when?
Yeah, my mom liked everybody on my mom's side liked to travel. So when I was 12, my mom, grandma, and one of my aunts, we went to Kenya for 2 weeks on a safari, and
Oh,
that was like the first big trip out of the country I think I'd ever done. But yeah, we would go to, I mean, the Caribbean a lot, like at least once a year, try to go to like Mexico or Dominican Republic or something to scuba diving. So,
no, it started back then. Yeah, you keep trying to
yep.
get me
I
underwater.
think you'll like it. It's
I
real
might.
fun.
I'm a surfer. I sit on the water, and then when I'm under the water, something's terribly wrong.
Oh my God.
That's when I'm closer to drowning. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't feel like we had like well, we honestly maybe that's why I'm so into national parks and things. That's sort of the accessible travel that my mom and I were able to do when I was younger. Um, it wasn't until my mom got remarried to a fella that I was not a fan of that they started like actually traveling, and I'm like, I'm not spending time with this guy. I'm like a mid teenager. I don't care that you're going to Peru. I'll
Yeah.
stay here,
Yeah.
which I regret. So then, where was it? Was it Virginia, Maryland? Like, where did you grow up?
So I was born in Western Maryland. It's about like from where DC is about 3 hours west.
Okay,
West. Yeah. Yeah. West. Lived there till I was 9, and then when my parents split, my mom moved back up to central New York. So we were with her during like the school year, and then holidays and summer we'd go back down to Maryland.
I see. So a lot of like, I wouldn't say middle of nowhere, but there's definitely, trees and things. You're not necessarily in like a concrete jungle.
Yeah, I've never lived in like a city. Even when
Right.
I lived in Singapore, the house I was at was like out in the jungly kind of area. So it
Mm.
wasn't like high rises or anything.
Right. And so then where did like veterinary medicine come from?
That I ask myself that question all the time.
Sure.
I'm not 100% sure. It just like it happened, and I guess that's my life's purpose because I don't feel like I worked real hard to make it happen, which is
Huh.
sad because a lot of people do. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way too, right? Like I feel guilty that I didn't like actually spend a lifetime kind of moving in this direction. Um,
yeah,
but I don't know. I'm sorry. I like I didn't know, and so we're here
right.
now.
Yeah, it was kind of just like I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't have anyone to talk to try to help me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I I did 2 years of just basic science courses at community college because I was like, what is the point of spending a lot of money at a university when I don't know what
Right.
I'm doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did that, and then I was like, well, I obviously like the science courses; those resonate with me more, and biology and things like that. And I was like, I like animals, maybe vet med or something. I seem to be
Yeah.
doing well enough. I could probably get in. So I transferred into Cornell in the animal science program, and I did 2 years there. I did not get into their vet school, and I was actually thinking about like, should I go for a master's in marine biology or like, what else am I going to do with my life?
Mm.
And the guy I was dating at the time, he had graduated from Ithaca College, right next to Cornell. He'd
Hmm.
graduated a year before me, and he was just working at the dive shop, not really sure what he wanted to do with his life. And then all of a sudden, one day was like, I'm going to join the Marines for 4 years. And I was like, what am I going to do for 4 years? I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to vet school. So I signed up for, I applied to Ross and St. George's, and I got into both, and I picked St. George's.
That's I love that you're just like, well, I have exactly 4 years, so I'm gonna look for a four
Right.
year program.
4 year program.
It's like can't do a 3 year. Couldn't
Yeah.
be a lawyer. Sorry, too bad. That's that's amazing. All right, well, and then from there you okay. So then you started doing GP or started doing ER.
I started with GP. So I finished vet school. He got out of the Marines, and then we moved back to Western New York, where he was from.
Mm,
And I did a year of GP at a practice, and um, was just like, I can't do these cold winters. Like, I'm used to the Caribbean.
mm,
Like, this is the middle of nowhere.
right.
I have no internet. I have no friends. Like, I hate this. So I was looking for other places. My best friend was living in Richmond, Virginia. So I had applied with some practices. And then they were like, we actually really need people in Virginia Beach area. So I ended up moving there and doing GP for another 4 years, until I was like, you know what? I really wanted to do ophthalmology residency out of school. And I didn't because I wanted to spend time with him.
Hmm.
But that was fizzling out. So I was like, well, now's the perfect time to go do an internship and try to get a residency. So that's what I did two internships, one in general rotating, but it was heavily ER based, and then a surgical one. Didn't get into ophthalmology. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
took
like
a
12 people do ever, right?
right,
There's like
right.
four people who are ophthalmologists or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So I was just like, I'm not doing more internships. I'm not running myself into the ground for something
right,
that's probably not going to happen.
right.
I want to just like make money and get out of the field if I can.
Sure. So then that would have been what, I guess 2012, 14, that
Yeah.
time frame?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Hmm.
it was 2014 when I moved to back to Virginia, but to Northern Virginia,
Okay.
and then was there until I went to Abu Dhabi in 2017.
So why not then go back to GP at that point?
I I don't like GP.
Yeah.
So I feel like GP for me was like and it was probably a different because it was corporate medicine, because I don't feel like it's the same as it was my first year out, which wasn't corporate. But it was just a lot of trying to educate people on like how to keep their pets healthy and best care of their pets and things, and them not listening to a single thing I said and just wanting like medication.
Right. Right.
Not wanting to work things up, not wanting to do like diagnostics. Like I hated like behavioral consultations were the bane of my existence, because you'd sit there for a half hour and like talk to them about like all the behavioral changes, like the things you can do, how you can help their pets, blah blah blah. And at the end, they'd just be like, "Can we just have some drugs?"
Right.
And I'd be like, "Sure, it's not going to work, but here you
That's
go."
that's interesting. I mean, yeah, because like preventative medicine stuff is so important. I mean, it makes it so that we as emergency doctors don't have to see your animals, right? Isn't
Right.
that? But there's something about the urgency of like, hey, your animal's like super sick, so we have to do these things now. That does allow us to do more things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could imagine that where it's like, a lot of conversations that are philosophical in a way where it's like, well, if you this is how we enhance your cat's environment so that whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like yeah, that sounds fantastic. And then it turns out like who's going to buy the extra water fountains and put 10 litter
Yeah.
boxes in the house or whatever it is, um
And
on
I
the
think,
theoretical.
and this is just me, my character flaw of a personality, is that it makes me anxious when people put a lot of trust in me. So
Yeah.
to be like, "You're my doctor for this pet's 12 years next of its life, and oh, it's diabetic now, and we need you to manage like its diabetes for the rest of its life." Like
Right.
it just it like I feel like my palms are sweating right now thinking about that. But like throw
Right.
me a seizing dog or a DKA, I'm like, "I got you. I can set you up for 12 hours, and then I can get you to somebody that's a lot smarter than me to like manage the ship."
Yeah, I could see that because it does sound a lot of like, if I have to be in control of this forever, it's like, what am I missing? What am I doing
Right.
wrong? Whereas it does feel safe to be able to pass it along to literally anybody else. Like if you're in the ER,
Yep.
it's going to go to the next doctor who ideally will catch something that I missed,
Right.
or it'll go to your primary vet who ideally will catch something that I missed, or it'll go to
Yep.
a specialist or whatever. I mean, there's other doctors who are going to look at it.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas if I'm like doing my job and have an appropriate relationship with the clients, most of the time I'm going to be your person forever. Yeah, that
Right.
sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Which then makes no sense that I'm trying to get into acupuncture, because I'm making myself that person now. Like,
Right.
so,
Yeah, and talk about self-doubt. Or like, because a lot of times you do. I mean, there's like a convincing aspect of like, no, this is, there's reasons that this works and whatever.
yeah.
I mean, we're way outside of my wheelhouse, but presumably you've like gotten them to buy into this as an idea. And so it
Yeah.
working or not working kind of hinges on you. And you're the person. Like if they don't like you, there's not really another
Hmm.
person to go to.
Right.
Hmm.
But I think also with the acupuncture, what I'm hoping is it's going to be kind of like going to a surgeon or a cardiologist or whatnot. It's like you believe in it, or you wouldn't be there, because it's not necessary. Not that a
That's
surgeon
fair.
isn't necessary, but like the people that are more dedicated and truly believe it works and see the value in it are hopefully not going to need as much convincing, because they took the
That's
effort
true.
to show up.
Yeah, you're right. That is true.
At least I'm banking on that.
I mean, this okay. So the acupuncture thing, and then this like yoga teacher training thing that you just like sort of skipped over. It does beg the question, like, what are we talking? Like, where did this come from? So, like, when you
Yeah.
2018, like, how were you already in a position where you're like, yeah, I think I'll spend a couple of months or whatever in Bali doing this training.
I mean, just welcome to my chaotic life.
Like, when did that part start for you?
Yeah, so when I've done yoga like here and there, like I taken a couple classes and things, and I liked the heated yoga stuff.
Oh,
Bikram
that's
before he
oh
like
no. That sounds
started.
miserable. I'm a sweaty
Yeah.
Italian. That sounds.
Oh,
God.
oh my gosh, I love it.
It's just like put me in a kiddie pool, I guess, and then I'll do it in there. Sorry.
Oh
All right, so you've done
no,
that.
yeah. I really got into yoga when I moved to Abu Dhabi because there was a studio there that had just opened like the week that I had moved there. So they were brand new. I was brand new. I met the owner. She was a lovely person. So it kind of became my home away from home because I made friends there.
Mm,
So it's like that's where I was always hanging out and doing. And I got really into the practice of it and wanted to do the teacher training because I would like to teach someday. But also, they say like you should do it because it gives you more understanding of your own practice. So it makes your own practice stronger,
mm,
which I completely agree. So that was
yeah.
always the plan to try. And they're hard, it's hard because they're usually like 3 weeks long, and trying to get a big chunk of time off for a vet is like next to impossible
Right. That's true.
unless you're making your own schedule.
I mean, I could see that because like when I was doing improv stuff, I definitely felt like my improv was elevated after I started teaching.
Hmm.
Because you definitely have to, it's like trying to explain anything to anybody. It really puts the pressure on you to fully understand what it is, and it shines a light of like, oh yeah, these are the areas where I don't know anything, or these are my weaknesses. So I have to like bolster that so that I can teach appropriately.
Yeah.
Hmm. So you liked it enough that, or I guess, fell into it enough that what, like a year and a half later, whatever, you're like, yeah, I guess I'll do this thing in Bali for a while.
Yeah. I mean, any excuse to go live in Bali for a month.
Okay. All right. That's fair too. Yeah. And then where did like the acupuncture stuff come in this whole journey?
So I don't remember which event came first, but I feel like they're equally important. For me personally, I was flying back from South Africa and I had to leave. Like this was after I had to leave Dubai and I was back in the States, and there was like a trip planned to South Africa with all my friends from Dubai, and I was leaving to go back to the US, and I was like, I don't know if I will ever see any of these people again. Like it was very emotional. I was like crying on the plane, and I remember um like I was in economy and I had 3 seats to myself, and I remember laying down like crying and going to sleep. And when I woke up, I couldn't open my mouth. My left jaw had
Oh,
completely seized up. Like the TMJ was just like and it was weeks of like basically eating soup because I could not
oh,
get it to. I went to a doctor that was just like, "Oh, you're just stressed. Here's some Xanax." I went to my dentist who was like, "Here's some Flexerol," and gave me a mouth guard, and like nothing helped. And I don't even remember how I ended up at an acupuncture place, but they stuck needles in my face with electric, and it was 50% better immediately. I went one more time and it was completely back to normal.
holy cow.
And then Olive, my dog, when she was 3, acutely went down. She herniated a disc in her back. She was never paralyzed, and it was fairly mild. It was like awful to have to know like what's going on.
Right.
And we MR'd her and everything, and it was like, yeah, it's not surgical. She's already doing better, but she was still pretty ataxic and paretic. And I took her to get acupunctured, and they needled her back. They did the electro, and she popped up and was walking like 95% normal after
Wow.
just that session. So, and for a dog to like, because they don't have the placebo effect, like for her to be like that significantly better, it's like,
Right.
yeah, this works.
Wow. Then, like, at what point did you get involved in the?
That would have been 2018. Yeah, 2018, because I was back from Singapore because I my dad had to keep the dogs while I was gone.
Oh, right.
Um, so that was 2018 when when that happened with her. And I remember saying when I saw everything, I was like, I am gonna do this someday. But it was 2020 when I started the coursework,
Wow.
which should have finished because it's the Chi Institute, which is Chinese medicine based in Florida. It
Mm,
takes about 6 months to get through the coursework, And I started in January 2022 and I finished it in, I think, June 2021 because the pandemic, like, it shut
Right.
everything down.
Yeah,
So
of
I had to,
course.
like, it took way longer.
Right. Gosh. You know what I like about, I mean, this is what I like about you. I love that like there's these couple of things that you're like, yeah, I like doing this thing, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and try to be as proficient as possible at that thing. Like I'm gonna get involved in such a level, like we were talking about before, like your scuba stuff. You're like, yeah, I like being a scuba. I'm gonna go ahead and just be like this crazy dive master, whatever. Or
Yeah.
it's like, underwater caves. Yeah, I could do that, no problem. I love that. So what's next? So what is the next thing that you're just like, yeah, I'm interested in this, which you're gonna, of course, become incredibly proficient at, and then be a master at?
We'll see. So I'm building up right now for an acro-yoga teacher training in December in
I mean,
Bali.
obviously, right, of
Yeah,
course.
obviously. Um,
As every emergency veterinarian does, right?
right.
It's like
Yep.
it's
Yep. Exactly. So it's just it's weird. It's been more of a it's very physical as you would imagine acrobatics is, but
right.
I was not expecting how tough it was going to be emotionally to like break through a lot of preconceived notions about myself.
Oh,
So that's been an interesting journey with all this as well.
like what? Like preconceived, like what?
So I I'm 5'7", and my dad's like 6 foot. My mom is like 5'1" or 5'2". So like she's short. And I remember growing up, like she wouldn't put me in gymnastics because she's like, "You're tall, you're not going to be flexible. This is not going to be
Oh,
your journey in life." And I remember being like really upset about that. And anytime do you remember when they used to make you do like flexibility tests in gym
right.
class in high school and
Yeah.
stuff? And you got to like, you have that box on your feet. You got to like reach your arms and like, what number can you get to? And I could never get very far and I
Yeah,
couldn't do
exactly. And then
pull-ups
they
and
like,
all this stuff.
yeah, it's like the presidential something something. God,
Yes.
I haven't thought about that in forever. Yeah, you
Yeah.
do it like once or twice or something, and no one ever tells you anything after that.
Right.
Like what the
Yeah. They
God?
give you absolutely no training for it. Gym class is just like, here's some racquet balls or something.
Right. Right. And then
And
one
then
day
one
you're just
day,
like, yeah, exactly. One day you're like, all right, how fast can you climb up this rope? Or how
right.
many pull-ups can
Yeah.
you do? I'm like, what?
Go run a mile when you've never run a day in your life. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So,
Yeah. So so it was hard like getting into yoga. I still felt like, you know, they always say like, "Oh, I'm not flexible." Well, that's why you need yoga. So it's been a struggle because I'm surrounded by all these like really flexible people and I have like strength, which is part of it too. So anyway, I'm not like a cheerleader. I've never been like the one. Do you also remember in gym, did they ever do this with you? They'd have all the kids stand in a circle and have like a giant parachute thing
oh,
and they put the
definitely.
teeniest little girl in the center and she'd get to fly up in the
R-
air and then come
Right.
back down.
Right.
I never got picked for that. Like
Oh, yeah.
I was not the teeny petite little girl.
Oh,
I had no desire to be a cheerleader. But I that was very much a mental thing about my height and my like
right.
body mass and all these things. So I don't know why I'm like putting myself in this acro stuff. I guess I didn't realize it was going to be a lot of that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which seems silly. Like you would assume it would be, but I didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be other things. So last week at my lessons that I've been doing, um, they're like, "All right, we're gonna do standing stuff now." And the guy's like, "I'm gonna stand behind you. I'm gonna put my hands on your hips. You're gonna face away from me. We're gonna like get ready to jump. You're gonna jump. I'm gonna lift you up and set you on my thighs."
Right.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm not top of the cheerleader girl. Like I can't do this. And they're like, "Yeah, you can."
Yeah. And so, like, a lifetime of you telling yourself that there's no way, not even believing that this is possible.
Right.
Now, suddenly, I assume that you did it without,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was a lot of like fear and this mind shift, and they're
Sure.
just like looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, no, he's strong enough. He can do this. You're going to be
Right.
fine.
Right. God, isn't it interesting like how we set up these limitations on ourselves so early in life and then we just spend a lifetime believing them somehow
Yeah.
as if they're
Well,
true.
and it was a belief that I don't feel like it was an okay to belief to have about myself. Like
Sure. Yeah.
it was it was nothing that was like holding me back from having a normal life. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
and I don't know, but it's just so random that that's where life took me into that one random like preconceived notion. Like, nope, we're gonna get rid of that.
Do you feel like you were compelled to do some of these things because of that, I guess, resistance? Like because of that kind of preconceived notions and fears and things like that?
Maybe because it's like that med. It wasn't anything that I really worked toward. It all just kind of fell into place.
Right.
Like I had wanted to do this. I had done this acro stuff at the studio in Abu Dhabi. This guy from California came out and taught the class, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Um, I want to do a teacher training in this someday. And then what, 3 years later, I like
Right.
signed up for it on a whim, and then I moved from Virginia to Austin, and Austin is like the mecca of acro people. Like there's
What?
it has
Barbecue and acro
right.
yoga.
I mean, keep Austin weird, whatever.
Right,
It's
that's true.
it's like the biggest group of people. Like they call them jams. There's jams every night of the week almost where like, 10 to 30 people will like come together in a gym somewhere and just practice acro together.
Wow.
And there's no way I would have been ready for this training if I hadn't moved here and found this community. I mean, I still don't feel ready for it, but
Right.
like
That's a condition of,
thank
I guess, life.
thank yeah. I mean, I question if Texas was the right decision to move or not, but as
I
far
mean,
as acro
it's
goes,
yeah,
it
exactly.
absolutely was.
Right. I mean, it sounds like there are definitely components of, especially Austin, that fit with, I guess, the general journey. I mean, where are we supposed to be anyway? Like, where the hell are we going? Why are we doing it? But it's all part of the journey. It all, I don't know, fits into something, I guess. So maybe you were
Yeah.
meant to take this, ER job in Austin, Texas, so that you could be a part of an acro community for a while.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and it's just I always try to stick back to that quote I heard. I don't remember where I heard it, but it was something like if you're struggling with like which decision, like if you got a decision, there's two options to it. Like there's no wrong decision. You just make you pick one, and then the universe like helps you get through that one. Like,
Yeah.
you know, of course you question and debate, but
Yeah.
it's just that's the decision that you made. So
That's one of the things that I feel like has helped me the most in ER and I mean life in general, but like ER in particular, where it's about like just doing something. If you don't do anything, that you're going to be in
right.
a far worse position. Just do something, and then like you can walk yourself back. Doing a thing is almost diagnostic in and of itself.
Yep.
You know. Do you
I
feel like
still
the? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I'm staring at this. I don't know if you remember the first time I was in North Carolina at the beach, and we were talking in your kitchen, and um, Brian was there, and I don't remember if it was you or if it was him, but we all like just kept repeating this like over and over and over again, and it became like an inside joke, and it was really funny, and maybe you forgot it, but it was life. She sure is tricky.
Yeah,
I
life. She sure is
She
tricky.
sure is tricky. I framed that. I had that made on Etsy and had it framed, and it's on my wall now too. Just like
That's
remind me, like whenever I'm feeling down, be like that life. She's a tricky prankster. Like
I love that too. Yeah, it does sort of feel like a lot of times life is just like, gotcha.
yeah, yep,
Like, oh, I got punked again by life.
yep.
Do you find that like the stuff that you're doing now kind of helps you get through your ER stuff? Or, I mean, is there a balance that you've achieved at all?
With the hobbies or with like the
Yeah, I
acupuncture?
guess. Yeah. I mean, well, I guess with all of it, because I know
Yeah.
ER is one of these things. It's not, I mean, there's some people who just love it. Like they just
Yeah.
love it. They breathe it. They'll live it forever. And, I feel like that there's some moments of that we all kind of get. But I find that, for myself at least, a lot of my ability to survive in ER has to do with stuff that I do outside of ER. Like
Yeah.
ER buys me the ability, it
Yep.
buys me time, truly. I mean, I have like then large swaths of time that I can, do the other stuff that I'm compelled to do.
Yeah, I that's completely how I feel. It does not bring me there's moments where it brings me joy, but on the whole it does not, but it affords me the time and the money to do things that bring me joy.
So do you think that I mean, if you, I don't know, ran into giant satchels of cash that were just kind of laying around, would you then just be done with this and focus only on those other things? Or do you feel like you would be, because, before you were talking about how veterinary medicine also, it's like doing a thing that makes you feel productive, that makes you feel like you're um, like contributing somehow, and that gives you satisfaction.
Yeah. I could walk away from emergency and never miss it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you've done it for a while.
yeah.
It's impressive the amount of time that you've spent in this field,
I
feeling the
know.
way that you
I
felt.
know.
It's not like you're
I
like, I love emergency.
I know. I feel like I should be so much better at it than I
I mean, you're quite good.
am.
Like, yeah, I always knew that. Like when we were overlapping shifts in Winchester, I'm like, oh, thank God, someone smarter than me has is taking care of
Oh
this.
my God.
Like that nonsense. Like the first time that we met, I think it was the first time that we met. I like passed you this garbage case that like
Oh,
we were still waiting on diagnostics, and like the owner we couldn't get a hold of,
yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
crashed and burned overnight.
Yep. No, you couldn't get a hold of the owner. Like they just showed up, dropped the cat, and left. So we couldn't even get money to run diagnostics. So it was just this like
That's right.
sad old febrile cat. And it was like, well, I guess hopefully they'll call us or show up and it won't die in the meantime. And then it died in the meantime.
Of course, yeah. God, yeah. We just ended up like doing stuff because it was like this cat is not in a
Yeah.
good place. Like we just need to do things until we can get a hold of these people.
Yeah.
And I guess that was during COVID, so it must have been like, yeah, you're right, like a drop off situation.
Yeah. Cause we had
And
like 12-hour wait times and people
right,
were just be like, here's my pet. Call me when you figured it out.
yeah, God, yeah. So you know what you're doing. Like, at least it was like, because you figured out, because I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but this cat does not look good. It was like FIP or something like that, right? I mean, didn't it?
I
I don't
think
know.
so. Yeah.
God, terrible situation that was. But anyway, you're doing fine. You do, you do just fine.
Sometimes it's so weird, and I don't know if you get this, but it's like sometimes you have a case and it's in front of you and you just look at it and you're just like, that's what that is. Or like this
Right.
dog came in and it had like sort of maybe collapsed and the owner thought it had a seizure and I was looking at it and I was like something's going to be weird with this, and I listened to it and I was just like, oh, that's AFib. And I've gone 15 years and never had an AFib case. And it was
Oh.
just like I was like, oh, that's what that sounds like on a real animal. Um,
Right.
but it's
Right.
hard when it's like presenting and the owner's like, oh no, it's definitely a seizure, like all this happened, and you're like, oh no, it had a syncopal event and it's got AFib. And
Right.
I mean, I can't do anything past that really except send you to a cardiologist. But
Yeah.
it's just I don't know, sometimes like there'll be weird cases and I just like get this intuitive like that's what it is, or like something happens that you're like you catch a mistake or something, like I don't know. It just, I don't, do you get that
Yeah.
sometimes?
I do, I love getting to the place, or I'm in the place now, right, where there's a lot of things that come in and you're just like, yeah, it's this. Oh, it's this. It's this. I mean, like you could get to that quote unquote diagnosis like really
Mm-hmm.
quick, which then allows you to prioritize diagnostics to like validate, what it is that you believe is going on,
Right.
or prove yourself wrong. But I find that there is a lot more of that.
Yeah. But you have to be careful with that because I
Yep.
had a obvious septic pyo come back for, it was like collapsed and there's like fluid leaking and it's like shot in the dark. You can get the right diagnosis. And we needed it stabilized. So this was during the pandemic when we were still doing curbside. So I called the owner and was like, your dog has pyometra, it's a uterine infection. Like, we're getting a BG now. I'm assuming it's going to be hypoglycemic. Like, we need to get, if you want to go forward with this, we need to get care. And I mean, the dog, it'd probably been like 2 minutes since the dog had left the owner to come back to us. And he starts yelling at me, accusing me of lying because nobody could have come to that diagnosis that fast and without doing any tests. And I was just like, I mean, I can spend $1,000 if you want to give you the diagnosis that I know it is. But like, I've never had somebody yell at me for being like too quick and saving the money.
That's just that's true.
It's like, you can't win.
But there is something about, I mean, you know, the other side of that is that you can, like, you don't want to do this confirmation bias medicine either,
right? For sure.
Where you're like, oh, this is definitely cancer, which I feel like I say all the time, or you know, just too often. But it's like, I need to then prove myself wrong. Like, that's the goal, because I don't want to miss something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all these, you know, cats that are with difficulty breathing or whatever that are then treated with a slug of steroids because they assume that it's asthma. Mm-hmm. It turns out that they were already in heart failure.
Yeah, now they're really in heart failure.
Yeah, now that's it. That's an end game now. But yeah, and that's a hard balance to also have. It is one of those things that I'm worried about kind of moving forward, is like, I do feel myself kind of getting to that place where it's just like, oh, it's this and oh, it's this, and you know, it's like, do I lose my careful, thoughtful medicine at the same time, especially as it ramps up in terms of how busy it is in, you know, the pandemic, or post-pandemic world. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do from here. Like, I don't know. Do I just kind of keep practicing the same? Because it's like, you know, it's like right now I'm kind of relying on a lot of specialists. I'm, you know, trying to stay up to date and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Is there something else that I should be doing to make myself even better? Is it a point of diminishing returns, right? Like, you know, at a certain point, is that better actually helpful at all?
I think that's a lot of angst in the profession, is like, you spend a decade, like all of your 20s, going to school and going to college and going to vet school and like all this work to get out in this field, and you're just out in it. And yeah, you'll go to a CE once a year and, you know, you'll spend 15 hours learning some stuff, but you're not, I remember my dad would always be like, oh, did you get you're getting a raise this year? I'm like, that's not how this works. Like, you just work, you get more efficient and you work harder and you see things more and then you make more money. Like, there's no, unless you take a management position, that's just the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, like on the pro-sal model or whatever, where you're making production rather.
Right, but you're not really like, you're not getting a master's, or you're not like moving up through a company, or like you're not unless you're like the head ER person, and then it's just like, well, now you're the head ER person. There's nowhere else to go. After coming from like a whole lifetime of like moving and achieving and learning and all this stuff, and now you're just like, well, now what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably also partially why I'm in the acupuncture stuff, is just like, cool, here's something else I can learn and achieve and add to my.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Whatever.
Yeah, you're right. Because growing up, now, like when you're in the education phase, especially vet school, but presumably all before that too, it's just like so much information. You learn a ton at all times. And then, you know, you feel behind, like you don't know what the hell's going on. And you know, at some point, you kind of like launch out of that into an actual career. And constantly there, you're just like, you know, doubting yourself and trying to figure out like, what the hell am I doing? You're trying to learn how to be a veterinarian. And then at some point that becomes okay, but you're no longer, and you know, it's kind of plateaus off. And so you're no longer in that like extreme learning and growth phase. Because there is always some, like, of course there's some, like you learn a lot from the specialists when you overlap with them, or, you know, as you talk to more and more clients, you try to figure out, oh, well, this is maybe the best way to explain this, or, how we manage a small team, or, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But it's not as extreme as it was before that.
Right. You're still showing up to do the same job for the next 30 years, potentially.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You definitely can. And then the industry's kind of designed that way. So unless because even on the small animal, like GP side, you are a GP doctor until you buy a practice, right? Like that's your next
Right.
step. But beyond that, you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it's almost like like in the Roadrunner cartoons where like Wile E. Coyote would just like sprint off a cliff and his legs would still be spinning, but he's like, there's nothing, and then he just falls and he like plummet. It's like that. You just you feel like you just like build so much momentum, and you're like making so much, making ground basically, and then all of a sudden your legs are moving quick, but you have nowhere to go.
Yeah. When they always say like the happiness is not in the goal, it's in the journey. But you have to have a goal to be on a journey. And if you're just like, not trying to say like, you can't just show up and work ER and that fulfills your life and that's the rest of your life and be completely happy. I wish I could, because it would make my life so much easier. But for me, it's just like, there's no goalpost that I'm trying to get to, except to maybe be a little better each day. Which again is an admirable goal.
Sure. Yeah. You're not complacent also, but yeah, you're not satisfied in and of itself by doing the work.
Right. And maybe I'll feel exactly the same way I feel right now once I finish all the acupuncture stuff and I'm hopefully just doing acupuncture. It'll just be like, well, now what?
Right. I mean, absolutely you will. I mean, that is definitely going to happen, because what'll occur is that what we're talking about is then the knowledge piece. So that's kind of where you've gotten now. You have all this knowledge about acupuncture. And then the next piece is going to be the application piece, and then presumably like starting your own business and that type of thing. But within the acupuncture space, you're going to get to that same plateau. That's just how anything works, because surely there is like I can, advance and try to, figure out whatever techniques it might be to make myself even that much better. But we're talking, again, diminishing returns, small space, like small itty bitty improvements that at the end of the day may or may not really make a big impact. So it's difficult to really engage with that.
True.
But I presume, though, with the acupuncture stuff is that, like, if you're running a business, that's going to be the task. How to run this business most effectively. Like, how do I make this work? And then whatever happens from there. Do you train people,
Yeah, it's going to be a very long time. And maybe that will take me to retirement. Hopefully I can retire. To get where the point I feel like I am now in emergency to feel like this in acupuncture, because you're exactly like one's going to be the knowledge base, which is going to take forever, and I would like to I have started my own business, but to like grow that, and then maybe someday like have a building, and then maybe add associates, and like there's so much to that's like a 20-year goal. It's not anything that's going to happen quickly.
Yeah, and equally, if you were to want to, like, not that you do, but if you were to start your own ER or, whatever, it's just this other phase of, the medicine is no longer the aspect, exactly. So that's not, let it have its diminishing returns, but now there's this other huge thing that you can, attack.
Yeah.
That's, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, I do wonder, because there's lots of people in this world who are fine with like this balance of just, you go to work and you do the work because it's the thing that because everyone has to work, right? Like we just have, at a certain point we just do, to engage in the outside activities, like buying groceries or whatever. So, like, you have to engage with that work. And some people just like, you go to work, you enjoy the people that you're working with, the day-to-day of it then becomes that. And then you go and you have the rest of your life. So it facilitates, the rest of your life. versus having this whole like goal wrapped into, or all the things that we're talking about, like this importance of wrapped into growing within the actual job itself. I almost think that there's a benefit to that mindset as well, being satisfied with the
Yeah.
thing, that to feel good at something that you're good at,
Yeah.
um, to hang out with the people that you're hanging out with, your team and all of that. And then you go home at the end of the day and you separate those. So do you think that you'll be transitioning? I mean, if possible, right? Like once you get your acupuncture stuff going, you'll transition out of ER and then into this and just never look back.
That's the goal for sure. I don't know if financially that's ever gonna work, but um, I would very much like to be able to do just that.
Yeah. I mean, and acro-yoga and, cave diving and whatever.
Yep,
All of those things.
all of the above.
I think you can do it. But again, I just think that everything is possible. Any of these things, especially, in the way that you've sort of lived your life thus far. It's like you engage in these activities and you'll try to figure out how to make those activities work and how to be the best at whatever it is that you're doing. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I think you can carve your little niche out
Yeah,
and do your business and survive on acupuncture needles and for the rest of your life.
yeah, that would be that would be
Yeah.
really nice. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I don't know. I like I'm very envious of the people that can be like, this is my 5 year plan. This is where I'm going to be in 5 years. This is where I'm like working towards. This is what I'm going to do. 10 years ago, there was no way I would have ever had the idea that this is where I would be in my
Yeah.
life. And anytime I try to plan like my life out and be like, I'm going to be, I'm going to graduate vet school. And within 2 years, I will have my first kid and we're going to buy a house and I'm going to have two horses and then I'll have another kid. And by the time I'm 30, I will have two kids and a house and land and horses and dogs.
Right. Right.
And my life at 30 looked absolutely nothing like that.
Right.
So it's just like, I just try not to stress. Like, I like to plan, but I try not to stress about, like, how am I going to use this? What am I going to do? What's the future hold? Like, it's just, it'll fall into place, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, you have sort of a direction that is set by kind of values or things that want in life. And that ends up being sort of it's not like a plan, but you're like, I'm just going to move in this general direction because
Yeah.
this feels like a thing that I want to be doing. And then you end up wherever it is that you end up, Abu Dhabi or, Singapore or
Yep.
Northern Virginia or, whatever, Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's all we can do. I feel like we are the most disappointed when we plan a very specific thing. Because oftentimes I feel like, the very specific thing is it's like it's created. It's manufactured as opposed to something that is like actually what we're looking for. Not always, but it's like, if I think of like, okay, if I have to ask the question or answer the question of like, what am I going to do in 5 years? I then have to start creating what a good answer to that is going to be,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, truly aligning, it's like, oh, like what actually, how do I feel about all of these things that I'm talking about? Because yeah, it's like, oh yeah, same thing. Oh, big house, couple acres, get
Yeah.
some horse, get like a goat. I've always wanted a goat, but it's
Yep.
like, if I, maybe that's what happens, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, the core things that matter the most to me, as long as I'm still doing those, like I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That
who knows?
actually, that you saying that actually, it just kind of clicked. Like, because I will like, and I've said that throughout this conversation is like, oh, I just 5 years ago I did this class and I was like, I'm gonna do an acro teacher training someday, and then that just like the idea was in my head, and then I just didn't care about how it was gonna happen, and now it's happening.
Right.
And it's like the same thing with vet school, the same thing with moving to Dubai, like all those things. Oh, this is so annoying. Um, Oh, this is so annoying having like breakthrough like mental shifts. Um, because I stress about the future so much. And it's like, you can't, and you just have to like not be attached to how you get to the outcome you desire. And oh, if I don't struggle with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, you just made me realize that I need to, well, crap.
Yeah, the idea is, yeah, you're just like if we care so much about the way that we do it, it's like we imagine a specific route to get to this specific thing that we want without really paying attention to the idea that like actually, you know what, there's so many different ways that that could happen and so many
Right.
different endpoints that that can look like that are the same idea.
Right.
So,
And most of the time, the way you wanted to get there, if you just like get there how it happened, it's a better experience or a better story than what you had thought in the first place.
right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
need you to repeat all of this back to me like tomorrow when I'm in a funk again and like really sad about my life. Be like, you remember you said this yesterday that you were totally embracing the chaos and the mystery.
The I love that. Yeah, embracing the chaos and the mystery. It's like life. She sure is tricky.
Yo, she sure
Part.
is.
Well, luckily it's recorded,
Yeah.
so I'll just send this to you.
Just like every day a little sound bite, like
Yeah, embrace the chaos and the mystery.
embrace the chaos.
I mean, that's I think that that's what what I'm trying to do right now, and I think it's from my own mental health side. I feel like I said, I'm more satisfied than I've ever felt before. Not
Yeah.
necessarily because I have any specific. It's like, oh yeah, I've achieved this thing that I wanted to achieve. No, I just kept on doing the thing and kept on doing whatever it is that I was drawn towards until and I accepted the chaos and the mystery, and then now I'm here. I'm like, okay, cool. Look at this. And then now, who knows what's next?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got to keep me updated about where your where your journey leads you. No, I love it. No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Good talking
absolutely.
to you. All
Yeah, you
right.
too.
Bye.
All right, bye.
So there you have it. That was my conversation with Jennifer Paugh. Yeah, it makes you feel like maybe you're not doing enough, right? That's how I feel. Whenever she's coming back on a plane and I'll get a text message about, oh yeah, just leaving Singapore or, whatever it is. I'm like, man, I feel like I need to be making different choices. But what I do appreciate is that there's this balance that she seems to be searching for. I wouldn't say found, but she's identified the things that absolutely she needs in her life in order to feel whole and feel human. And that's a struggle. Even just identifying those things, I think is just so difficult for us sometimes. We spend so much of our lives just working and chipping away at this thing that we feel like we need to do, whatever that is. Like, well, I gotta do all this. I can't really explore whether or not I really love woodworking. I gotta make sure that the dishes are clean and the floors are swept and that the kids are off at school and whatever that is. And I feel like it is really nice to see someone trying that, just trying to fill their life with experiences to try to figure out what it is that makes them happy, makes them content, makes them feel alive. And it's not that we always, land there. It's not that, you need to travel in order to find that. But it is nice. I think that pushing ourselves out of a comfort zone, which, oftentimes travel, especially in some of these more exotic locations that are not, effectively facsimiles of Brooklyn. It's like, oh yeah, Paris. This part of Paris is basically the same as any downtown, right? Here's a coffee shop, here's a bar, here's a restaurant. Those are people. This is a tourist attraction. When you're pushing yourself into experiences where you don't feel comfortable right away, that's good. That's where the growth occurs. And so even just the pursuit, right? The pursuit of it, that's where life is. It's nestled in those little nooks and crannies. So I appreciate having people in my life that do that and then make me sort of think, what is it that I'm doing? And what is an experience that I'm denying myself because of some logistical reason that really I should be doing? But what's also really nice to hear when I talk to people like Jen is that it's not like they have it figured out. It's like you look on these lives of Instagram and people in hammocks overlooking a clear blue sea and atop a cliff, and someone's feeding them strawberries, and you think, wow, they got it made. Yeah, but we're not really seeing the rest of life, right? Whatever the life is that surrounds that image, that's completely in the background. So this image is on display for you, but then there's all the other stuff too. And so it's nice to see, for me, that there's, even in those moments and those that the pieces of life that are punctuated by ecstasy, there's also a lot of other turmoil that comes with it. And that's what makes us all human. So it makes me feel like, maybe I'm not doing so bad when I'm in my, darker places, as long as I'm trying to do something that again fills me with some sort of life as well. So, so talking to Jen is a wonderful way for me to see that there is a balance in all of this. And it's, I want her to continue to explore, some of these things. I know that she wants to kind of get more into acupuncture and, get kind of out of the ER space, where we sort of this whirlpool vortex thing where we get stuck. And yes, she has a traditional job with a contract that came with a signing bonus, and there's something logistically that gets you stuck there too. But also, it's difficult to make a complete change and go from something where that there will be a paycheck to going to something else that may be more fulfilling and interesting to you, that at least seems what's next, but is completely uncertain. So I am definitely in her corner, and I hope for the best. And for all of you out there who are in, similar places, or, just want to peer in the window and see the interesting things in the lives of people like Jen, great. Here you go. Here's permission. If you're waiting on someone else to give you permission to go out and start your business, or to go travel, or to just take the weekend and, unplug from everybody and stare at a tree, or whatever it is that you need, allow me to be the one to give you permission to do that. Enjoy it. You need it. If you feel like you need it, you need it. If you've gotten to the point where you've identified this is something that is missing from my life, well, then you need it. So, I, Matt Asciutto, hereby declare that you, random person whose name I do not know, have permission to do whatever it is that your heart is compelled to do. How's that? It was even ordered in a decree. So whatever you're doing, have fun with it. The things that aren't fun, they're temporary. Everything is necessary for something else to come in next. So, with that said, thank you again for listening. Thank you again for tuning in and subscribing. If you're subscribing, and if not, please subscribe for a reason that I don't know. And tune in and share. And, hopefully I'll keep doing this as long as you're willing to listen. So I'm looking forward to it. And thank you again. And thank you again to Jen or Dr. Paugh for coming in and talking to me. I'll see you next time. And until then, may all your medical records save before the computer shuts down.